Hello and welcome to Improving Scottish Football. My name is Kieran, and today on the podcast I'm joined by Rory Hamilton. Now, if you've watched any Scotland game or a European match involving a Scottish team, you'll undoubtedly recognise Rory's voice. He's in many ways become the voice of Scottish football, and thankfully for us, he's rather good at it. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about Scotland, because of course we've qualified for the Euros, which is very exciting. We're then going to talk about the world of broadcasting and commentating. But of course, the whole point of this podcast is to talk about things that we can improve. So we are going to have a discussion about what Scottish football as a whole could do to be more innovative, to move outside of our comfort zone and to start taking some risks. In particular, we're going to look at the Belgian system, the Dutch system, and look at how they reinvented themselves and are now reaping the rewards. Please do like, share, subscribe, review, all that good stuff. It's really important that we try and reach as wide an audience as possible, so anything you guys can do is hugely appreciated. Let's keep this going. Let's improve Scottish football. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Rory Hamilton. Rory, how are you?
I am very good, thank you, and enjoying a bit of sunshine, which is very rare for these last couple of weeks, but very nice.
Good. Well, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Really delighted you're here, and I think there's only one place to start, which is some positive news, which is of course regarding Scotland and the fact we have qualified for Euro 2024, which is very exciting. So obviously you've been commentating on all the games for us. How has this qualification journey been for you?
Well, I think first up, it's a fantastic achievement to have won the opening 5 games in a group for the first time in history, and we've had some extremely good teams over the years that haven't managed that. To do it with 2 games to go it feels alien. That we're not having to wait until the last game against Norway and suddenly it's coming down to a very nervy last 10 minutes or something like that. I think from start to finish, it's been an incredible campaign. And when you look back at the opening 2 games, Cyprus, I don't think offered very much at Hampden, and were quite comfortably blown away, albeit that the goals came, or the 2 of the goals came late from McTominay. Spain at Hampden was, I think, as easy a game as Scotland have had against a top team since I can't remember. Norway away was incredible. Georgia home in the Mount Florida monsoon is one that will... as much as the campaign's been a dream, there were moments of that were a nightmare. Well, some of the best things that I've ever heard in my headset are, Rory, just hand back to Emma, please. Because that's tough. But then, even after that, Cyprus away, again, was very like the home game. It was very straightforward. We were always in control. And then Spain away had so much to talk about, so much drama. Didn't get the result, but still an incredible experience. So I think from start to finish, well, it's not finished yet, but there is a conclusion, and the outcome is that we've qualified, and that's fantastic. First automatic qualification since France '98. So we shouldn't underestimate that achievement. But I think also with this team, and there's a mentality that's different with this team. They're not content with qualification. I think that they will go with the intent of doing something in Germany, and particularly being the first Scottish team to get out of a group. And they absolutely have that within them to be able to achieve that.
Yeah. You can see how much the side has grown, and you completely agree about they'll be setting themselves some clear objectives already, because I think probably a lot of them are probably still reeling a little bit from Euro 2020 or 21 and the disappointment that we had in the group stages, the fact we only scored one goal. I think there was probably some mistakes made, and I would like to think that certainly the group is going to be stronger off the back of that. But yeah, I mean, what an amazing campaign it's been. And you referenced the experience you guys had against the Georgian opposition at Hampden. I remember that so vividly because I was traveling away for work and I was sitting up in a hotel room waiting basically for the game to recommence. And I just sat and watched like an hour or an hour and a half of you guys, I have to say, brilliantly handling it. I thought Emma was superb. Yes. I mean, how you handle that situation where you have nothing to work off. But I also take your point about it feeling really alien. And I guess that's a really interesting point, because probably like yourself and like many listeners, having watched Scottish football religiously for 20, 25 years, we have sat through so much disappointment, and it really has been quite a horrific experience. I've sat through literally every qualifier of like votes, of Burley, of Levine, etc. And it's it really does take a lot out of you, I think. And the fact that we are now at this stage, I'm almost struggling to comprehend it. And I don't think this qualification will feel real until Germany actually begins.
I've gone to almost every home and away Scotland game since the campaign in that had France and Italy and Ukraine and Lithuania and Georgia, and travelled home and away with Scotland. So I've experienced all of what you're talking about.
Was that just as a fan, or were you working?
Yeah. No. As a supporter, we've got a group of. I mean, it's fluctuated over the years, but there's sort of a core of about 8 of us who have been going since around that time. It started out as me and one other guy, and it's grown, and then it shrunk, and it's grown again, and right now everyone wants to be part of it again. So it's a really good time and a really good reward for those supporters that have been through all that. And I've never thought that it's never a hardship to go on these trips. It's always fun, but the 90 minutes can be tough, and there are times where you do sometimes question whether you can really justify this. I remember after we played, it was the group with, I think, Serbia, Wales, Belgium, that one. And I think we'd drawn a couple at home, went down to Cardiff, lost late to a Gareth Bale goal, then went over to Belgium, played off the park. And you do start to wonder, can I really justify taking this time off work, taking time away from family? In the end, you do justify it to yourself, and you keep going back because you love it. I mean, it's an addiction. And that's how I chose to enjoy my football. And it actually becomes a little bit of a dilemma then when you're asked to cover the games for the national team, because that takes away that element of being a fan that I can't get anywhere else. But to be honest, it's such a privilege to be asked to do it and to be in a position where you can commentate on something that you feel so passionately about. So very fortunate. And in the end, I've got a really good relationship with the people at Viaplay, and that makes it an easy decision to want to go along for that ride.
Yeah. And you've helped us shake one of the worst tags that I've ever heard in my life, which is the glorious failures tag. Thankfully, I haven't heard that mentioned once in the last few years. But honestly, that was just getting on my nerves, eh?
I mean, even from when I first heard it, I've not been having it at all. And I can't believe that there would be a single professional athlete that would have that mentality, that there's something predetermined in our psyche that means something's going to go wrong and it's almost not our fault. It's in your own hands. Take control of it and make it happen. That would be for me the professional sportsman's outlook on things. I think glorious failure has been an excuse. Maybe sometimes people just trying to add a bit of light humor to their disappointment. We were expecting it anyway. It never happens for Scotland. Well, look, it is happening now. And I think Steve Clarke's a big part of that. I think this has taken decades probably for us to shake a little bit of that mentality.
Yeah.
I don't think he would entertain glorious failure in any shape or form. He's got a proper winner's mentality. He doesn't get too high, he doesn't get too low. I mean, I'm sure he probably had a smile to himself last night, but he won't be thinking this is done. This job is complete. It's far from it. So yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think that phrase can get in the bin. I think it's always been awful, and this group hopefully are the ones that can maybe just as a nation take our psyche beyond that, because I think it's a defeatist mentality.
Yeah, completely agree. And so touching on good phrases and stuff. I want to just pay a bit of tribute to you because I genuinely think you're a top commentator. I think you're brilliant. Honestly, really, really love listening to you, and the passion.
Thank you.
The passion you have for the game is clear and is so important for all of us who are watching it. Because it's such a crucial part of the experience. One bit I really did enjoy, and it was obviously partly the moment, but that final goal in Oslo, the Kenny McLean goal, you said, and I've actually had to write it down here because honestly I loved it. I loved it so much, partly because I've probably rewatched it back about 100 times.
Me too.
But you said Scotland have picked their moment to strike. Unbelievable scenes at the Ullaval. They all came to see Haaland, but it's Scotland who are putting on a show in the final minutes in Oslo. Right. How did you pull back the curtain? How did you come up with that? Was that all spur of the moment stuff? Or did you have, how does it work? Do you write down some notes and you think a show rhyming with Oslo?
I hadn't even realised when you said that there that show did rhyme with Oslo. I hadn't even picked up on that. That one is pure emotion. There are definitely times when maybe throughout a game that you develop certain feelings, or you might think of a little phrase and think, oh, if in some ridiculous scenario something happens, then that would work. The Oslo finish, I've always said it's not textbook commentary in any way. It's pure emotion. It's off the cuff, and it's just the messages that the brain sent to the mouth at that time, and almost trying to hold yourself back a little bit, because I think one of the things that usually we would do a game with a lip mic, so you've got the ability to bring it up and down. In Oslo, we actually had headsets with the mic already attached to it, so you can't flip it away to get rid of your audio.
Yeah.
Usually I would, if I felt I was getting a bit too excited, I might take the mic away from myself so that I can just then compose myself, take a second, and then go again. You didn't have that option in Oslo, and that's I think also why you get Michael's big big cheer going up as well. And I think that added to it all. You can't do it on every goal at all because you can only do it for the special ones, and that was just a great experience, as much for me as it would have been if I was in the away end there.
Yeah. Oh man, such a good moment. And yeah, as you say, Michael Stewart screaming over the top of you. It was just brilliant. Oh, I was running around the living room and like my toddler looking at me going, what the hell is Daddy up to? But what a brilliant moment. Anyway, from a neutral's point of view, I genuinely thought it was such a good line and it rhymed and everything. I was like, oh, must have had that one up his sleeve. Okay, that's good to know. You just kind of, that was just the pure emotion. So, okay, picking up on commentating then, and I think it would just be good just to touch on a little bit how you got into it, if you don't mind, because I think a lot of people would be really interested to hear how your journey into this line of work began.
With a twist of luck, really. I used to work so I'll take it all the way back to when I was at uni in Edinburgh, and I used to come through on a Saturday to work for Scott Sport and really just at STV, and really just put they had their post-match interviews from their first division managers, and I just had to upload them onto their website. But it put me in a place and allowed me to maybe show that I had something that could offer them, and allowed to develop trust. The more you got experience, the more I would put myself forward. If there was ever an opportunity, I would just say yes. Be it rugby, be it rugby league, be it boxing. Obviously, football was the staple, but just wanted to be involved in everything. So that then became the position of VT. Well, on live games, I did VT coordinating, which is where you're selecting which replays are shown. So really, like, the trucks they're great fun, but it's a high pressure environment. There's folks shouting, telling you they've got the best angle, and then you're at the machine that's cutting the lines live. So you make a mistake, which I did once or twice, then that's what goes live to air, and it's a mistake. You have to brush it off and keep going. But the first break that I got, I was doing production on a rugby program for STV, and I think we did the first or second week of the program, and it was Scottish, Welsh, and Irish teams in the league. It was the Celtic league at the time, and everyone's sort of patting themselves on the back. Well done. It was like, well, what are the criticisms of the program? We've got Irish commentators, we've got Welsh commentators, no Scottish voice on the games. So I sort of joked in the meeting, well, look, I could do it if you want. Let's sort of laugh, and then meeting ends. And then it got to the day before our next game, and I was driving down because I was commuting from Speyside to Glasgow at the time because I didn't have anywhere to live other than up at my mum and dad's. And the boss phoned me, Colin Davidson. He said, "Oh, you made that joke in the meeting. The mic's yours for Friday night." So that was how I got the first chance to ever do any commentary, and from there started doing stuff with Sky and Sky Sports News. And again, it's similar to how I started with STV. It puts you in the right place, and people start to trust you. You can then make your suggestions to the right people. You can put your voice on things, and if people like it, then you'll get a chance. And that was Sky were great with me. And then I think I could actually say that I was a full-time commentator when Derek Ray left BT Sport, and I was given the opportunity to move across there, and sort of everything from then on is easier to sort of document after that, because it's beforehand that most people don't really know how you get to that stage.
Yeah. One of the best career pieces of advice I've ever heard is it's better to be at the bottom of a ladder you want to climb than halfway up one you don't.
That's a brilliant shout. I completely agree. Knowing it helps me to this day that I was in the trucks, and it's not that now I've necessarily moved up. I'm just doing a different role. It's all part of of very good people doing their jobs very well. You know, you talk about pieces of advice. The best bit that I've been given, I was lucky enough to get Martin Tyler's number a good few years ago when I was starting at Sky and getting a chance, and Martin couldn't have been better. It was phone me anytime for as long as you like, and just give me. But he said, best piece of advice I can give you is don't take on too much advice, which I think what he meant was be your own person. Don't try to copy me. Don't try to be Derek Ray. Don't try to be Bill McLaren.
Yeah. We do have an amazing history, don't we, of, Scottish commentators. It's incredible, actually, when you think back to all the iconic voices that we've produced as a nation.
Yeah, and it doesn't just stop at sport. I mean, we're as broadcasters, Scots have always been at the forefront. It's just a pity of late that we've not really had teams on the grand scale. That always helps you. If Scotland are doing well, then it helps you maybe get taken along for the ride for a bit. So,
yeah. Okay, well that brings us quite nicely onto back onto Scottish football, I guess. And I mean, this podcast is called Improving Scottish Football, so we should probably talk about some things that you yourself would actually like in an ideal world to see, because obviously you have lived and breathed the game for a long, long time. So what frustrates you the most, or what are the big picture stuff that you would love to see changed?
Wow, that's how long have we got? I think for a start, I mean, I've listened to most of your podcasts, and I think it's been a really good addition to what is a really well-informed scene in Scotland. I think there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good things, and I've really enjoyed the start of yours. And I think the name is perfect because we always have to keep improving. If we don't improve, then we'll stand still or you go backwards, because everywhere else is. And in that sense, you can always do better. And I think that Scottish football has got a bit of a mentality to stand still and accept the status quo. I mean, we look and we celebrate that we have, in my opinion, the biggest derby in Europe, possibly world football. I mean, it's right up there. The Old Firm is right up there, and we should absolutely celebrate that. We should try and promote it as best we can. But at the same time, there's been a sort of acceptance that they have all the power, that I think the other clubs have accepted. And you can understand it when you see the financial outlook that, well, it's been mid-80s since anyone else won the league, that's just what it's going to be. And I think also broadcasters want Celtic and Rangers because that sells the most subscriptions, and that's fair from a business point of view. But what I think that we need to celebrate and encourage competition. The better the league is, the more of an asset it is, the more sellable it is. I mean, imagine if we had Celtic, Rangers, Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen locked in a title race. That would be incredible. It would be good for Celtic and Rangers because I think it would drive up their standards. If you sort of play God for a bit, and if you're going to change one thing in Scottish football, I would ditch the 11-1 voting rule.
Yeah,
I've never understood how it got in, how it hasn't disappeared, and how that's a really normal way of making a business decision. I've never liked it. I don't think it should be there.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do we bring up the standard of the other teams when obviously Celtic and Rangers are on a different financial level, and always will be miles ahead, purely based on obviously capacity of stadiums and the fan bases, etc. It Does it require these clubs to come up with new innovative strategies and just take ownership of their own clubs and try and do something a bit different, something a bit unusual, rather than just doing same old stuff? Or does it require something from the top level, something more strategic from the SPFL level, to somehow redistribute things or change the system to bring the whole level up?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're never going to have a level playing field. I don't think anyone's advocating, although I think it would be really exciting for football as a whole if I had an NFL style draft, and the budgets are all the same, would be fascinating. But that's not going to happen football's gone down a business world. Teams are traded on the stock market. It's not possible to do that. I think it would be really interesting if they started that from the very early days, but it's not happening now. There's absolutely no chance. But I think there are ways where you can make it a little bit fairer, because you like competition.
Big time.
Nobody. I remember. You look at that incredible Barcelona team under Pep that used to just pass teams off the park, and they'd have 85% possession, and they'd win every game 5-0. That's incredible to watch once or twice. But I don't want to see teams winning 5-6-0 every week. I would rather watch a 2-2 between two teams that aren't as good as that. So I don't think quality always offers you entertainment. I think competition offers you entertainment. I think we're never going to compete with England financially. Slightly worrying that financially the EFL is growing at a quicker rate than Scotland is.
Yeah.
I think then you need to start being innovative and not just accepting what your place is. Doing something different that makes you attractive to investors, to sponsors, to broadcasters.
Yeah.
That make them step up and say, "Oh, I like what's going on in Scotland. That's really interesting." They might be more attractive to a broadcaster coming in and maybe looking to try out new things.
Absolutely.
I think one area where I've always thought that as the sort of finances of England and now the rest of Europe is starting to follow as well, it's the gulf is so vast. If I was looking at Scottish football, I would be thinking, make yourself the most attractive place for a young footballer in the UK to come. Be the Ajax of the UK, so that you're the place that every 17-year-old kid wants to go, because there's a route to the first team. I think there's a real lack of young Scots coming through our academies, and I know the best ones are getting picked off younger and younger to go to not even huge clubs in England, but the setups there are better. Their chances of playing first team football, not great. You see it with Ben Doak, he's an exceptional talent and he will get opportunities, but there are so many others that will go and never see the light of the first team dressing room. I think that's where Scotland is in a good position, because there are good young players, and if you can say to them, there is a pathway, there
Yeah.
is a future for you here. I think a lot of them are sold a dream, and the clubs don't necessarily do their utmost to fulfill that. So that's where I think, and that's what fans attach themselves to more than anything else, is a young Scot that has come through. It doesn't mean that the game has to be absolutely full of them and they get the chance over anyone else, but give them a pathway, an opportunity to get in that first team. It would help the national team. It would help the clubs. And if you do that through quotas, I think is a way of slightly leveling a hugely imbalanced playing field at the moment.
So just to kind of come in on a few of those points, because you've made a lot of good points there. I guess first and foremost, the young player situation and making ourselves a great place for young players to come and learn their trade. I mean, I think that is an absolute no-brainer. And I've had recent chats on the podcast to people in Norway and Croatia, countries that are notorious for literally sticking 16, 17, 18-year-olds in the first teams and, really developing them, and then not being afraid to sell them on to a top 5 league. And that being a clear recognized pathway. And now all these young players, recognize that these countries are places to go. Again, I've mentioned this on the pod before. I think a lot of it does come down to the fact that I think we're still a bit too proud to recognize the fact that we are now a stepping stone nation. Because obviously back in the day, we used to have top world-class players in our leagues, and people would come and have the prime of their career in Scotland, which also then leads on to that point about the gulf between England and Scotland. And it is frustrating because, again, when I was watching Scottish football 20, 25 years ago, the gulf really wasn't that big. Like in 2002, let's say, the conversation was, if Celtic and Rangers went to the English Premiership, would they be in the top 6 in the Premiership? Would they be able to challenge for the title? Now the conversation is, would they even be able to compete, in the Premiership? And we've just fallen so far behind. It's crazy how far we've just stagnated. And for me, you've touched on it as well. We need to change. And I'm going to throw another inspirational quote out because I love this one as well. JFK famously said, "Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future." And I feel that probably sums up Scottish football, broadly speaking, for the last 20, 25 years.
Yeah, I think that's a great quote. And it's absolutely bang on. And I think we've got a tendency to compare ourselves to England a bit too much, and also to complain about it and think that we're being hard done by. Look, if you're not happy with it, go do something about it and make it change. So I think that we need to be the ones that go out and force a change, show what we have that's better than other places. We have some fantastic things about Scottish football, some unbelievable fixtures. And also, the comparison with England is unfair because we're never gonna get to that. I think the comparison that I think's a much better and a more realistic one to look at is Dutch football, the Eredivisie. I think you've got there a league where, you've got traditionally some huge clubs that are going to be bigger and more dominant. Your Ajax, Feyenoord, PSV, but you've also got some pretty serious competition with AZ Alkmaar, with Twente, Utrecht. I would have thought would be a club, Heerenveen, that can probably throw up some big results. Who are also clubs that are selling at a market level above our clubs. They're dealing in different markets. So your top branch, your Ajaxes, there's a respect for their league that is bigger than the respect for the Scottish leagues. They're selling at the 80, 60, 40 million mark. We've not gone above 25. They're buying then from the sort of 15 to 20 million mark, whereas we're sort of 5 million for your Celtic and Rangers is a big splash, and that continues as you go down. AZ are selling players for 20, whereas maybe an Aberdeen are selling for 2. And I think the Netherlands is a fairer comparison, where they have got some pretty good competition in their league. I think they've become a really attractive league to broadcasters. They've tried to do their own thing with their own channel, where they had every game broadcast on TV every week, which I know fans love their 3 o'clocks, but the modern game, if you want to stay a part of the bandwagon, then I'm sorry, you need to make a few sacrifices. And if games get moved for TV, I think they have to be fairly done by the leagues. I don't think you should have people traveling the full length of the country on a Sunday night. But you look at every other league in the world, and the games are spread out over a weekend. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's what we should do. And I think you need to make yourself as attractive to those companies, be it broadcasters, that are coming in to invest in your product, not just to buy it, but to invest in it and help it be as attractive a prospect as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Dutch is a great example. I'll also throw another one back at you, which is Belgium as well. They, I think over the past 10 years, they have completely redone their whole league structure to the point where it's a bit too crazy. It's a bit mental, but the point is they have done something completely different. And in that 10 years since they've completely reinvented their league, they have doubled the TV deal that they had. And not only that, their clubs are making huge strides in Europe. They're doing incredibly well. Now, how much of that is actually down to, that change in strategic direction and reinventing themselves? I'm not sure. It might just be a perfect storm of things, but at least they are doing something different, and they're realizing that, hey, maybe if we actually want to get more money and, get better sponsors, get better TV deals, reach a bigger audience, let's think outside the box and try and just do something different.
So what have they done? I know they have as you say, it's a bit bonkers. They have the playoff system at the end of the league, don't they?
Yeah. It's
what have they tried to do?
Well, in a nutshell, the way I'll try and remember how this works. I believe so. It's a 16 team. No, it's fine. It's okay. Right, here we go. Because it is actually quite entertaining. It is a 16 team league. They play each other twice for 30 games. Then everyone's points gets cut in half. And the top 6 maybe play off against each other for the title.
Home and away, or
home and away, I believe.
Yeah.
But the point is, because everyone's points are halved, it then means that you can have someone unusual winning the league title, because if you compare it to Scotland, Celtic and Rangers by that point would have already the gap would be huge, and that's how you ended up having Antwerp winning it last year for the first time, possibly in their history, or certainly for a long, long time.
I'm pretty sure it was, yes.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the teams that are not in the top six, so the rest, the other 10 teams, are then joined by the top 6 teams of the league below. They are then split into like 4 groups of 4, and then the winners of those 4 groups of 4 play off against each other, and then the winner gets the Europa Conference League spot. So you can have someone finishing 6th in the second division and qualifying for Europe. But the point is, it just adds drama. There's playoff games.
So that's something that I was almost going to bring up, and what that goes is so much further, and it involves everyone. It's a little bit complicated, but I like it because I think it's really important to look at other leagues. It's also really important to look at other sports and see what they do. And if I do a lot of work in rugby, and if the league season just finished when you'd all played everyone twice and that was it, most leagues would be done by March, and really you've not got that much to play for. So I do a lot of stuff for the URC, which involves teams from Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Italy, and South Africa. It's fascinating. When it gets to the playoffs, so it's a 16-team league, the top 8 go into the playoffs, and okay, those that finished higher up get home advantage in the playoffs. You wouldn't necessarily have to do that in football. You could do it over 2 legs, and you get these knockout games at the end of the season. Now Leinster have absolutely blitzed. They've almost gone unbeaten for 2 years in regular league games, but they've blown it in the playoffs. And it makes it so interesting because you get these South African teams, especially because they're strong, and if you get them on home soil, they're really tough to beat. Coming in, and it's making these playoff games really unpredictable. You think, right, we've got a team that is unbeaten, but on a one-off, it cannot happen for them. And I think that's where we need to embrace having different winners. I mean, Celtic and Rangers have got it so good in Scotland that, I mean, almost getting trebles is becoming a norm. A double's not enough for Celtic these days because they've had so many in recent times that really we need to find a way. And that's not a way to be down on Celtic. It's not their fault that they're so much stronger, but financially they have the biggest budget. So really they should be winning the league.
You know, obviously it's great, obviously talking about these ideas. It's another thing trying to implement them. And I guess one of the biggest issues, obviously you've mentioned the 11-to-1 voting system makes things almost impossible. Do the clubs just have a bit too much power? Is everyone, do you think, just happy with the kind of, if it's not broke, don't fix it sort of approach? Is that the kind of root of this?
I think so, and it goes back to so much of what we've said. It's just an acceptance of the status quo. I don't think you're gonna move anywhere with what we're doing. So I think you've got to change up something, and I think you're right. I think the clubs do have too much power, and sometimes, actually, often don't make the best decision, because how many times have we talked about self-interest? And of course, clubs they're always going to do that. They're always going to vote for what is best for them at that very moment and not think about the bigger picture. But what we're talking about is improving the game as a whole in the long term. And yes, I think that's when decisions need to be taken out of their hands, because it's very easy to sit and go, right, well, this offer we make X amount, and in this one we make X minus one. They're going to take X.
Yeah. And of course, a lot of people like to criticize, the likes of Neil Doncaster and the SPFL, but ultimately, they are administrators and their job is just to effectively carry out what they are instructed to do by the clubs. I mean, honestly, I don't really know how you change the system, but it feels like we need, someone with different perspective or some other fresh voices to come in and almost try and take charge and just steer it in maybe a more strategic direction, with a better overview and, better future planning, as opposed to the clubs, as you say, just going for X because this is going to make me the most money at this moment in time.
Yeah, and you're right. That is Neil Doncaster's role, is to represent the clubs and to take proposals to the club and to guide them on that. And look, he does a good job, and the clubs are happy with the way that things are set up at the moment. I think if you want to change, and we're probably getting to a fairly critical level within Scottish football at the moment, where our coefficient is beginning to, well, it's not beginning to, it's dropping like a stone these last 2 years. That we might need to think of something different within the structure. So I think what we have is very good for a league structure. It might need something else. I think that you're alluding to decision makers within that, above that can try to force some business development to grow the product that we have.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I'll be slightly less subtle, I guess, with where I was going with it. I mean, I guess really one of my bugbears is that Scottish football as a whole, I believe, is too pale, male, and stale. I don't know if you've heard that phrase before, but yep. At the end of the day, there is a lot of old white men in charge of everything, and it's a thing with British society as well. That is the reality of it, and that lack of diversity. And I'm not just talking. Even just age diversity, even just having younger people in the room, is hugely advantageous, because having diversity of voice gives you the ability to see opportunities and threats, etc. And I was actually reading something the other day, which was about the CEO life cycle. And this is actually coming from the Harvard Business Review. This is not my usual reading, I should say. But it says that the average lifespan for a CEO is about 7 years, and that's actually quite a good length of time for people to stay in roles. And replacing leadership isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a good practice. It's good practice, in the world of business. And I guess there's so many people at the top of different places in Scottish football. They've been there for so long. My worry is that we've just not got best practice, really.
And a lot of the time it's people biding their time because they might be next, or they might be too down the line from getting that top job. So it doesn't make sense to ruffle feathers. It's keep it mellow, keep the waters calm, and that's when I think you're right, in that it is good to have new and fresh ideas, sometimes from other worlds.
Yeah,
Scottish football knows what Scottish football is, and it's so ingrained within our psyche and the people that are in it that you maybe can't see outwards. So yes, I think any business should think like that, to look outside of their comfort zone and bring in fresh ideas. And we're talking about being innovative within the structures of Scottish football. Yeah, how long did it take to bring in playoffs? It was the most obvious thing in the world.
Yeah.
And when they were brought in and everyone realized it was really good, and there was loads of praise dished out, and I was like, why is the praise being dished out for this? It should have been done like years ago, because it was happening elsewhere. And why did we wait?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
you got to be bold, and not every decision will work. Not everything will be right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a comfort zone thing. But the thing is, if we do try some new stuff and it doesn't work, do you know what? We can actually change it back. I mean, the Belgian league structure that I recited, they've actually been changing that system every few years. They've had a few good goes at, they'll spend a couple of years doing it one way and then work out, oh, actually that didn't quite work, and then improving it. So, we shouldn't be terrified of change.
Yeah, the MLS is another good market probably to look at. Obviously, it's a very different consumer market in the States. That they really have to draw their interest to a new audience, but it's another league that's overtaking us. It may not be within UEFA's coefficient, but the MLS has gone from zero and almost like a joke league to some fans in Scotland to it's better and it's wealthier now.
Oh, big time. I honestly, I can't believe the amount of people who think that it is still a joke. And I'm like, no, they have just flown past us.
And look, if anyone knows how to market sports, to market people, to market themselves, the Americans are the very best in the business at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be doing an episode hopefully fairly soon on the MLS and looking into how they did their TV deal and some of the marketing and stuff. So I'll hopefully dive into that in more detail in due course. But anyway,
I'll have a good listen to that. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. So listen, I've thoroughly enjoyed this, Rory, and we could probably go on for another hour, to be honest. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you the magic wand question, which I ask every guest. If you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about Scottish football, what would it be?
I mean, I think it would be to have just the potential for multiple winners, different winners. I know that's probably not a very satisfactory answer because it's very vague, but at the moment, one team winning everything. It's great if you're Celtic. For neutrals, I don't know. I think it diminishes everything that we're sort of saying that we're fighting for. And I think in the long term, the big teams would embrace that competition as well. So I would like to see greater competition. If the magic wand was that every team had exactly the same budget to play with, then maybe that would be quite a good thing to do.
Okay, brilliant. Great. Well, Rory, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and yeah, enjoy the last two Scotland games. I guess you're going to be commentating on, presumably, the what have we got? Georgia away and Norway at home. You'll be commentating
Georgia away, Norway at home.
Okay, great. Can't wait to work out. Can't wait to see what lines you come up with.
I'll try my best
when we score some last minute winners. So listen, thanks again, Rory, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks a lot, Kieran.